This episode is presented in partnership with the Greater Tygerberg Partnership. Visit them at gtp.org.za. Welcome to another episode of Future Cities Africa, where we get into the minds of thought leaders and visionaries impacting the future of African cities. Today the spotlight is on Bellville in South Africa. We'll be discussing how Bellville is positioning itself as a secondary city to Cape Town. We'll be talking about how Bellville is also planning on becoming a sustainable, inclusive and prosperous leading African city, and much more. My guest today is Warren Hewitt. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Tygerberg Partnership. Warren, welcome. Give us a brief introduction to your background and role as CEO of the Greater Tygerberg Partnership.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, my background to date, I grew up in Johannesburg. I had the opportunity to come down to Cape Town and study at UCT. I'm a chartered accountant by trade. I moved back to Johannesburg to do articles and continue my professional career there. And then whilst working with Southern Sun, I had a chance to come down to Cape Town and head up one of the big financial divisions here. And from there progressed into different spaces. I was financial director at the Arabella Group. I then got into the logistics space and was the CEO of a big logistics company down here. And the opportunity arose to work for the GTP. In fact, in the introduction and talking to the board of the GTP, I found it fascinating the work that they were proposing being done in Bellville, and specifically the kind of effort that was being put into changing a community and changing an environment. So it intrigued me. It was something that I was fascinated by, and I've certainly learned and grown through the process.
What exactly is the Greater Tygerberg Partnership and what do you do?
The Greater Tygerberg Partnership is a not-for-profit company. We work with the board of directors, independent board of directors, and we work very closely with the public sector in the city of Cape Town. The formation was driven around the model that was created in Cape Town CBD about 25 years ago with the Cape Town Partnership, where the city and the private sector got together and drove a rejuvenation of the CBD. And the GTP was formed around the same principle of focusing on the northern corridor, the Voortrekker Road corridor in Bellville specifically, and exposing the value that exists here and rejuvenating this area.
Where did it all start for the Greater Tygerberg Partnership, and where did the need for such an organization stem from?
The GTP was established in 2012 and pretty much in conjunction with the Voortrekker Road City Improvement District, which formulated around the same time. It really was a case of stakeholders in and around the area between the private sector, Sanlam, the tertiary educational institutions like Stellenbosch University and some other key stakeholders approached the city with the formation of a partnership along the similar lines of the Cape Town Partnership. So that's more or less how long we've been in existence.
Speaking to friends and family who used to live in the area in the 90s and before then, they always talked about how Bellville was such a vibrant and up-and-coming area, especially around the Voortrekker Road. What slowed down progress?
I don't think so much slowed down progress. Things have changed. I think there was significant capital flight over a period, probably 25, 30 years ago. I dare say that private developers tend to follow opportunity rather than wait for spatial frameworks to be developed by public sectors. So I think a lot of the private developers started moving into areas like Tiger Valley, into Century City. And I think the CBD of Bellville started being neglected, and the personality started changing. I think we're now starting to see different parts of our community coming forward. I think there's a large foreign national component that's come into Bellville, which to my mind is very positive. I think it is different. I don't think it's worse, and I think that economy has been significantly bolstered by the changing of the guard within the environment of the Bellville CBD. But I think the slowness to accelerate a development framework for Bellville led the private sector to go look for other opportunities.
So what has changed? What has been speeding up progress lately?
There's been a renewed focus on Bellville. I think any major city around the world, and I know we've touched on it before, the role of the secondary city. Any major city requires infrastructural support around its core, and Bellville certainly is that. We not only are the second biggest economic hub within the Cape Town metropole, and keeping in mind Bellville at one stage was its own city. We had our own municipality. So recognizing the fact that Bellville is a significant part of the Cape Town metropole is now starting to drive more attention, more development opportunity, and recognition for the infrastructure that sits in around it. The the people are starting to feel that well. COVID has accelerated that to a large extent. I think a lot more people are working in environments where it's not demanding of them to go into a CBD office, and a lot more things are changing. So things like public transport is playing a larger role, and Bellville sits very nicely in that niche.
The Greater Tygerberg Partnership is mandated to unlock Bellville's potential to be a sustainable, inclusive and leading African city. What progress has been made since the inception of the GTP, and how are you delivering on your mandate?
Daniel, the GTP plays a role in different facets. One of our key responsibilities is promotion of the area, and we become a catalyst for attracting attention and development opportunity within the space. But we don't play a role only in institutional or development capital. We play a role in social capital as well. We get involved in various social development programs. We partner with various other NPOs in the area. So we play quite a varied and diverse role, and it's sometimes quite hard to nail it down as to the exact value. But the primary purpose is to promote the area as an investment destination and unlock the value that's inherent in the area. And I know we'll touch on it a little bit later, but that really is one of the key attributes of key things that we're promoting.
So Bellville is establishing itself as a secondary city to Cape Town and a very important economic hub. What unique characteristics and features enable Bellville to do this?
I might diversify a little bit here, but when I first moved into Bellville, as I mentioned, I came from Joburg. I lived primarily in the southern suburbs. And having moved into the Bellville area, I was astounded at the raw potential that this area has. I cannot think of another area in the country, in fact, that has the same amount of potential. We sit on a critical transport route, and that's not just train. We are the busiest transport interchange in the Western Cape Metropole. Bellville services in pre-COVID times close to 350,000 trips a day. So it's a thriving hub of activity in normal circumstances, and that's a combination of train trips when they're working, buses and the Golden Arrow bus system, the taxis, and taxis have grown significantly over the last 5 years. I don't want to say they've doubled in terms of activity levels, but there certainly is a marked increase in transport-related activity in the area. So transport plays a big role. Base infrastructure. Bellville sits on some of the fastest connectivity lines in Cape Town. From a fibre and connectivity point of view, we've got a massive infrastructure. We've got very solid under-the-ground infrastructure in water and sewage. We sit between two national roads, so from an accessibility point of view, we're well situated. We've got a good road infrastructure. We are closer to the Cape Town International Airport than the Cape Town CBD is. In fact, we're around 8 kilometres away, so we're neighbours to the Cape Town International Airport. And we're one of the intermodal hubs for the ports. So a lot of containers come into the Bellville zone directly from port. So we've almost got every access to transport in the area. The other big factors, which again, and I don't want to waffle too long around some of the value we have. We're the highest density of educational facilities anywhere that I know of, certainly in the country. We've got 3 major universities, plus a myriad of TVET colleges. We have in a very narrow space, 100 square kilometres, which is, as you know, as an urban planner, is not very big, 150 schools. So there's a high density of education in the area. We're a health hub. We've got Africa's second biggest public hospital in Tygerberg Hospital sitting right on our doorstep. We've got more beds, hospital beds per square kilometre than anywhere else. We have quite rightly near the airport, a logistics hub, which is significant in the area. So there's a massive amount of attributes that Bellville and the Bellville area, Para included, have as a promotion song sheet, effectively.
Looking ahead, what is the vision for Bellville over the next 5 and 50 years?
Investment. I think investment opportunity. It's actually interesting. We've been talking to developers and investors, and slowly but surely, with a bit of momentum and a bit of exposure to what the opportunities are, we're seeing the initial stages of a trickle in terms of investment and expansion. In discussion with logistics executives, there's a lot more activity around warehousing, third-party logistics, distribution centres in and around transport hubs. We're seeing investment from the universities, and the University of the Western Cape is a massive partner of ours. They're expanding their footprint quite significantly after being termed in the old days a Bush University. They're now making a significant contribution to to the CBD and the environment around Bellville. They effectively are a large employer. Stellenbosch University have just expanded and spent close to $500 million on their new medical facility at the Tygerberg Hospital. There's continued expansion. The City of Cape Town have recognised that and have spent an enormous amount of time and effort in drawing up what is called the Bellville Future City Master Plan, where they've incorporated experts and consultants from around the world to start mapping out what the future Bellville could look like. It is a vision for what is potentially possible in this environment. And I think that kind of conversation is going to lead developers and commercial, industrial, residential to start sitting up and taking notice of what we have. The potential's here. It needs a bit of momentum, and I think we're starting to see the tick up of that momentum.
Definitely ambitious vision, but what major challenges are standing in the way of Bellville achieving its vision, and how will you address these challenges?
I'm not a developer, but I deal with a lot of developers, and I think the single biggest roadblock for them is the process in development applications. I know there's the Western Cape government have got involved in war rooms. I deal quite extensively with the Western Cape Property Developers Forum and engage with their members, and application processes are just too long. If we're wanting to accelerate development and accelerate economic advancement in any specific area, it doesn't necessarily have to be Bellville, but if we're really serious about what we want to do, we have to accelerate that application process. There's almost too much bureaucracy in a developer identifying an opportunity, and 24, 36 months later, his applications haven't been approved yet, and he's now lost the edge and he's lost his yield on development. So that, for me, would be a significant change and something that I would like to see.
How would you address this challenge if you had the means?
We engage extensively with the City of Cape Town and their various departments. In fact, all the sort of mini projects we get involved in, be they lighting, public parks, etc., we engage with the city. And this is one area that we're pushing quite hard in trying to streamline and hopefully at a time in the future creates a task team which focuses specifically around areas for development. And I know we have urban development zones, but really if you want to incentivize development, give them a turnaround in the applications. And so we're dealing with the various structures within the City of Cape Town and the Western Cape government, but to try and drive that and shave off some time in that process.
So if I were to give you a magic wand to advance to your vision, what one piece of legislation or even one piece of people's thinking or doing would you change, and why?
It's going to sound like a repeat, but red tape. I would certainly try and remove as much red tape as I could. I think the willingness of the private sector, the willingness of the residents and the community to become supportive. We've seen now through recent times the riots that have happened through KwaZulu-Natal, in Gauteng, and how people in this country have rallied. And I think the willingness of the man in the street to get behind initiatives, get behind opportunities is there. We just need to lift the shackles of allowing them to get involved and make a difference for their future. So I really do think that if we could remove, and it's not just the development applications, but red tape in making progress in an economic front, be it licenses, be it trading, be it whatever else, is really key. So I think that is really important.
So on the topic of collaboration, how important is stakeholder collaboration, especially between public and private sector, and what role does the GTP play in facilitating and enabling that?
Absolutely critical. Partnerships, not only in our name, but partnerships are so important in trying to drive change. And in fact, it's almost a tripartite. So we work with the private sector, who some big players in this area. We've got some institutional companies here, Sanlam, the Fashini Group, Cipla, Momentum. So we've got some massive companies who really are well vested, not just financially, but they're well vested in terms of their employees, and they want to see progress and they see that opportunity arising. Engagement with the public sector needs a bridge. The public sector traditionally, and I think the Western Cape are better than most, but the public sector traditionally have been more conservative and are slightly less flexible. And I think that bridge and that interaction and the role we play in that should certainly contribute to the partnership and growth of the area. And then the educational sector plays an important role. So when we're dealing with tertiary institutions and their progress, they've obviously got their own mandates, and interacting those is also very important. So in fact, we've recently formed what we call the Tertiary Education Forum, where the City of Cape Town can interact and engage with the leaders from our universities. And we've also created a CEO forum where the private sector can engage with the public sector in the City of Cape Town and understand each other's roles going forward.
So what advice would you give to other smaller towns and cities who are in the process of rejuvenating themselves?
Interesting. It's a hard road. It really is a hard road. These kind of partnerships don't come easy, and funding is a massive, massive challenge. Public sector funding is limited, and the demands placed on any municipality, not just in this town, not in the country, not in all around the world, will have the same experience. So my advice would be to engage with the community and the private sector as early on in the process as possible, to paint a vision that the private sector buy into creates opportunity for funding which grant funding doesn't allow. It creates opportunities for buy-in from people who are going to be long-term investors, long-term participants, and that buy-in of a community is really important. I think that's the single piece of advice I would give any small town is get your local community and your local companies and private sector behind your initiatives, and then partner with the private sector.
So why is Bellville such a great showcase and template for African cities?
Interesting. I gave a presentation a while back at a conference in Pittsburgh, in fact, and we talked about how a major metropole, and Cape Town being an international city, has relationships with other international cities. And the city of Cape Town have very strong relationships with international counterparts in Manchester and New York, etc. Secondary nodes within a metropole should have a more localized connection. And Bellville is perfect for that African connection. We are well connected, as I mentioned, transport-wise, but certainly as we've seen the growth of the foreign national communities within the Bellville environment, we're seeing those connections become stronger and stronger. And our reach into Africa and our focus into things like Africa become more critical. And as you evolve and walk around the Bellville CBD that it is today, there's more identity with multicultural environments and interesting, fascinating, exciting spaces and thought processes and trading methods. And so combine that with the technology and the advancement that we're having in the university and research, UWC's AR and VR teams, and combining all of that intellectual capital that's sitting in one melting pot is just a launching pad into Africa.
And what is Bellville's plans for being a smart city or a smarter, more efficient city?
Interesting question. Quite often if you ask somebody about a smart city, they'd refer to a street pole that lights come on automatically or something else happens automatically. I feel that a smart city is where you see people engaging, people in public spaces, people having more time to do things together rather than be isolated behind brick walls and windows. So Bellville's community is brilliant. You know, we've got a rich history in culture in this area, in music in this area. We're creating a new culture of art and foods and so on. So to have people enjoying that kind of environment and engaging, that for me is a smart city, because then you're talking to each other.
And lastly, how can people and organizations get involved in the Greater Tygerberg Partnership, and how can they contact you?
From our website, you'll find a lot more information around the projects that we're involved in, some of the work we're doing, some of the opportunities for collaboration on there. The website is gtp.org.za. We also have other websites where we're driving community initiatives, and you can go and have a look at bellvilleconnect.co.za. I'm reachable at any stage, and I'm quite happy that you share my information with your viewers and reach out to us. We're hosting interns from different parts of the country, in fact from around the world, who are interested in working together with us on different projects. So we're very accessible and very willing to engage.
Warren, thank you.
Absolute pleasure, Daniel.
So that was Warren Hewitt, the CEO of the Greater Tygerberg Partnership. A special thanks to the New National Hotel in Parow for hosting us. Make sure to subscribe on futurecitiesafrica.com.